of sports activities, as I've just mentioned to you, whether it's, well, in the field of India as a cricketing nation, where we go back, we go to Bangladesh, win only one match and come back, or maybe we won two, and we come back and we won against Bangladesh and Afghanistan. Uh, but I mean, the cricket team has done us well also, done us proud also, but whatever it is. And we say that, okay, we are a top sporting nation or a top science and technology nation or whatever it is. Now, that is what I want you to reflect upon. You are fortunate to be in an institution which actually is a center of excellence, where you have produced leaders who have gone up the global ladder. Satya Nadella is a remarkable example of that from your institution, and there are any number of more CEOs who have globally made their mark, and thereby rests that responsibility upon you to ensure not only you make this nation proud, but you make this institution proud, from which you will always call your alma mater. And why do I say this? Not so much today as in 2020, the median age of this country will be 29 years. China is 36, US is 45. The median age is going to be 29 for this. We are a young nation. We will have a huge, sizable population of young people, and that is our human capital. And that is the human capital which needs to be incubated, needs to be molded, needs to be trained in in institutions like you are in today, because you have not only to be a leader of men, you have to be the change agent, to have brought about a change in the society of the kind that I talked about earlier. And I'm conscious as I stand before you and I speak to you today that I address decidedly the best among the faculty that is available in the institute or available anywhere in the country today, but I address some of the brightest minds who are going to be future global leaders. And I want to impress upon you the fact that no business can be sustainable and successful in the long run unless it is based on an edifice of credibility and integrity. Ethical management and leadership is the cornerstone for any successful business enterprise. It should be in the mantra, in your mantra, to practice and promote ethical values in your organization. You have to set the tone and create a culture of honesty and integrity. Adherence to ethics and integrity needs to be ensured at all the time, and it cannot be compromised under any circumstances. Once you have taken that decision that I will not let myself be compromised under any circumstances, half the battle is won. There will be times, as I mentioned earlier, in the interest of competition or whatever it is, that will be very tough. Those will be very tempting times. But believe me, you have to rise above those tempting times, because they are the ones which will give you a temptation to take the shortcuts. Ethical conduct is a prerequisite for any sustainable business, and any enterprise which seeks to establish rapid growth with lack of ethics is bound to falter in the long run. Now, let me also impress upon you the fact that India stands at an inflection point today, such that economic prosperity or economic growth for this nation is no longer an option. It is a total necessity. And it is a necessity. Why? Because such growth is sustainable, and if it can be made inclusive, it will affect, as I said earlier, 1/6 of the global population. When the story of India is written, let it not be said that governance, it should be written, I'd rather put it that way, it should be written that governance was the solution and not the problem, wherein the state was the facilitator and not really the predator. It will be a very unfortunate event in Indian economic history if the reverse becomes true, where the state becomes the predator and does not facilitate, incubate, or nurture that growth. These edicts in our governance structure have to be an essential ingredient, as when I said earlier that economic growth is no longer an option, it's a necessity. Why? Because far too much is at stake and for far too many people. Let it also be said, and I would like each one of you to contemplate and think about it, that for people like us, probably Dr. Ramdas Pai and myself, we are at the winter of our careers. Most of it is behind us. But for the young, in which I include the faculty also, let it not be said that you had all the opportunities, all the facilities, all the wherewithal, but when the challenge really arose, you were found wanting. And that is the challenge which has come upon us today. We need to rise up to the challenge, face it squarely, and ensure that this nation is set on a path of economic prosperity in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We will now take questions.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Abhijit Mitra. I am a PGP1 student here at APME. My question is, being in the public administration for so long, how would you compare today's economic scenario where we are more dependent on foreign influx of investment towards a more sustainable growth model where we have to nurture young leaders and young entrepreneurs to rise in the country?
Abhijit, nations have grown relying upon foreign investment. Do you know what's the contribution of treasury bills in the US of foreign countries? China owns roughly 1/3 of the treasury bills which have been floated by the US. The extent of debt is so huge, but all nations rely upon foreign investments, and foreign investment per se is not bad for the economic health of any country. It's only a question that that foreign investment must be utilized productively to create capital, in the sense that capital as maybe infrastructure, maybe tangible assets, maybe something which delivers in the long run. Once that foreign investment goes away into revenue expenditure, then it will have deleterious effects upon the economy. But the moment you create capital assets out of it, it's very productive and good. So per se, it's not a bad thing for any country.
Sir, my name is Tushar. I'm from PGP1. And talking about sustainable economic development, I want to ask one thing. As we know that policies keep on changing as the government changes after every 5 years. But if you really want to have sustainable economic development in any sector, your policies should be consistent for long enough. Like if you take the example of China, when they focused on industrial development, they kept the policies consistent for a very long time. But in India, the policies keep on changing. So because of that, no particular sector is able to grow well. So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, actually, you've said, it's a very valid point, the point that you're making, because it has been unfortunate for India that the consistency of policy formulation has not been established over a long period of time. And that's why we meander through PPAs, through MOU, kind of, I'm talking about power projects, various things kept happening. Andhra had one pattern, Karnataka had another pattern, like that happened. But I think now, maybe in the last 10 to 12 years, in a large number of ways, successive governments are following the broad parameters of policy paradigms which have been laid down in a consistent fashion. In last 7 to 8 years, you have been seeing that. That's why when I talked about Turn of the Millennium, I said that we consolidated it upon the reforms of 1991. So in a large number of ways, governments or the political executive has seen the need for a consistency in policy formulation, and hopefully that trend will continue. But you are very right, it's very essential for sustained economic development to ensure that there is consistency, long-term consistency in the policies that we formulate.
Hi sir, I am Mridul Agarwal from PGP 1. Sir, we welcome you to Manipal. In recent past, you've attended CNN IBN Indian of the Year, CNN IBN Indian of the Year Awards, where you have quoted, "It's my immense pleasure to give the award to Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, Indian of the Year in category of politics." This was just 1 week before Mr. Kejriwal became the Chief Minister of Delhi. Now that we know that our party had been there for mere 40 days, we all have our own opinions about it, but sir, what is your opinion on why this government did not sustain and what went wrong?
Mridul, why did you have to ask me all these difficult questions? See, no political party follows a model which is like any other party. I think Aam Aadmi Party, if you look at them closely, they did all the right things in the beginning, absolutely the right things, in the sense that they were the ones who contributed to the churning that you see in society. They asked the right questions, they asked the wrong people the right accountability kind of questions. But I think in the longer term, they never thought that they will come into government by themselves. So they continued to don the role of maybe an opposition, maybe an activist, or whatever it may be. But when they did get into government, I personally feel, and I've said it openly also, they probably did not have ready a model of economic governance or economic administration, or a model of administration by itself. So when you need depth, you need experience, you need a great amount of advice to run the complex systems that constitute government today. And I think somewhere down the line, that depth they did not have. But I think they must continue to be on the face of the politics of this country, because in a large number of ways, they are asking the right questions, and all of us need to continue asking those right questions. Okay?
I am Professor James. You touched upon the moral deficit. Rather, you focused on that. Can you please elaborate on the moral deficit and the complete picture you can really bring into the Indian context? If we take the case of AAP, maybe AAP, it could be a passing phase unless many citizens are willing to really accept this fact that there is a moral deficit in the country. Our governance is not going to get up. There is also a responsibility on the part of the citizens who would rather have this moral goodness with them. There's a major problem in India, in the country. What is your clarification?
In fact, Professor James, you echo my viewpoint. When I said that this citizen, and I talked of Gen Next, and I said the citizen has come center stage, it is this citizen who has come center stage today who will have to ensure that if this country is facing moral deficit, or deficit of ethics as I called it, that is made good. Because you can have a deficit of anything in this country, trust, fiscal, revenue, whatever it is, but the moment ethics takes a beating, you lose long-term sustainability of any model of anything like that. So that's why I'm stressing the fact again that all our actions will have to be based upon morality, in the sense that you should be in a position to look into the mirror and say, yes, I have taken this decision today, but I can look myself into the eye and say that decision that I have taken is actually the correct decision. And that decision was not to favor XYZ, or was not steeped in some kind of nepotism, or issues of that like. So all that I'm trying to say is that we will have to steel ourselves, steel our moral fiber, and ensure that this deficit of ethics or morality that has been seen in the recent past is made good. Does that satisfy you?
That looks like a very difficult goal in the country right now.
Why do you set yourself only easy goals, Professor James?
I encourage my students to
Ev-
really set it high. No
I-
aim is a crime.
No, I'm telling you,
That's it.
I derive inspiration every morning when I wake up and see what is the challenge today. Each one of us response should be larger than the challenge. And the challenge facing the nation today is the challenge that I talked about. There is and unless we decide that we are big enough to take on this challenge, I don't think we have a long way to go.
Hello, sir. I'm Amrita from PGP1. I have this question. Whether it's managing a team or good governance, bringing accountability from others is a big hurdle, especially if it's not in the individual's priority list. So what effective measures do you think should we as individuals or we as a team or a country should take to bring in that accountability more amongst people? And that without stunting that individual or the team's confidence or potential.
Well, it's a simple thing. When I said that they have begun asking the right questions, don't take anything for granted. My father said, go for engineering. I took the engineering exam. Somewhere down the line, he said, no, forget it. Your elder brother is an engineer. You go and do the civil services. I shut my eyes. I went in for doing BA honors in economics. I never asked him why. Your issue should be that, look, okay, I will do, but I need to know why I'm being asked to do this. Or if something has gone wrong, please tell me who has done the wrong thing and hold him accountable for that. So accountability is something which has to be ingrained into our DNA. Transparency is something which has to be ingrained into our DNA, because what can happen? You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And that's why if you start asking the small questions now, soon you will be asking the right questions and the bigger questions which probably Kejriwal has even not thought of as yet.
Welcome to Manipal, sir. Sir, I am a student of TAPME, PGP1. Sir,